Central Ohio, Franklin County. It's Wednesday. It's 3 o'clock. So you know what time that is. A brotherly conversation about wealth, health, and race in Franklin County. Today with me, it's the three amigos, man. It is my Congresswoman, your Congresswoman, our Congresswoman, the Congresswoman Joyce Beatty. There's a round of applause happening all over Franklin County right now for you. So we know that. And then I got my man with me here today, my brother, Shannon Hardin, president of Columbus City Council. Now, here's the funny thing about Shannon Hardin. Before y'all give him a round of applause, I know that's what y'all doing. People confuse me and Shannon all the time. And personally, I think it's a compliment to me. I mean, I'm only 20 years older than him.
And you're getting that out the way, Kevin, so I won't make a dig at you for being so much older.
I told you, look, I can mute you too. So, I mean, if we start talking, I'm going to be like, we can't hear you.
This is your show. I apologize.
Right. We can't hear you. Yeah, I get to talk about you. But it's crazy because we have been to each other's church and people will come up to us and start talking to us like I see you every week. And you think I'm
You still don't know who I am.
I just be like, and they come to me like, hey,
and then I started growing my hair out, and then Commissioner grew his hair out. And so Commissioner, I just did another differential. I put a little color in my hair. So if I see some color in your hair, I know you're really coming for me.
What color is that?
It's like a brown,
Or maybe I ought to do that. Let me get in on that conversation.
Okay.
I said it's 2020. So if there's any year you can do a little something different, it's 2020. So
you know what? You're right about that, man. You are right about that. Look, let's get down to it. I mean, neither one of you need any real introductions. I mean, that's the truth. And that's the beauty about how hard you both work and what you do in this community. I know people have been writing me and asking me all week, are y'all going to talk about what happened? Y'all going to talk about what happened? So I said, yeah, we're going to talk about it. We're going to have a few things to say. But before we do that, I have a couple of things that I've asked all of the guests that have been on the show. And I'm going to ask you all too. I mean, 2020 has been a hell of a year, to say the least. And, we started off with a global pandemic that none of us have seen in our lifetime, certainly not the way it is. Then there was, certainly the tragedy. Well, no, before that, there was the shutdown, and we stopped our economy. We really hadn't seen anything like that. We've all seen a lot in our lifetime, particularly in our political lives, but we hadn't seen that where we just stopped. School stopped, work stopped. You had the NBA canceled the season. The baseball canceled their season. It was something we had never seen before. And then there was the awful tragedy of George Floyd's death, his murder, quite frankly, and then the unrest that followed across the country. You saw countries not just in Minnesota and Minneapolis, but places from Columbus to Cleveland to Cincinnati and all over the country demonstrate their frustration, their exhaustion, their anger from this story that gets told over and over and just doesn't have to be. These folks did not have to die. And that's the real reality that set off, I think, a storm of things. Anyways, so here we are, it's October, and we still don't know where the bottom is. We still don't know where the vaccine is, we know it's in process, but then there's the whole distribution element of it. We don't know what other kind of thing we'll be hit with. There's 3 months left in the year, and we still got an election before us, and so there's so many dynamics, but if there was one word that would describe 2020 to you, what would that one word be? Now I'm gonna tell you, I get you a little bit. I tell you, I've heard words. I mean, some people are very optimistic. Some people are very pessimistic. I've heard I'm exhausted, I'm tired, I'm angry, but I'm hopeful, I'm encouraged. I feel like there's a new chapter being written. Just different words that have illustrated different feelings. And interestingly, there's been this sort of, the men and the women tend to sort of line up the same. And so I want to, without clearly you two have never watched this show, so you don't know what folks have said. I won't even go into that. But that being said, I'm
usually in Washington.
In your defense, you're deciding, billions of dollars at a time. So I'm gonna let it go.
I have watched this show before.
I actually did see the first couple of shows.
Hey, I mean, when you started this, we were deep in COVID, so there wasn't much. No, we were
right. Okay. Well, so then you don't need to cheat. I need to give you the cheat. What's your one word? What's your word to describe 2020? Who wants to go first?
It doesn't. My word would be explosive.
Ooh.
And that way you can take it as half empty or half full. It was very explosive as we look at poverty and economic and healthcare.
Mm-hmm.
It was explosive as we look at the criminal justice system. It was explosive as we look at great leaders and the deaths of great leaders, whether that's John Lewis or Ruth Bader Ginsburg, George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Jacob, the list goes on of explosiveness. But it was also explosive of Black Lives Matters protesters, people coming together exploded in their concern, their care, their love. Non-traditional people came together, Black people and white people, people who were on the streets, outsiders. It was explosive with emotion, with gratitude, and with togetherness.
Yeah, I love that word. And that's not a word that, because some words get repeated by people, but that's not a word that I don't believe I've had. And I think it's a good illustration of how the year's been and how it still is. Given last night, we still are
Very
in an explosive environment. And I
Right.
think, some of it, we're going to get to this a little bit later, but I think some of what you saw last night is an accumulation of just being in 2020 in America this year. They're the candidates under the spotlight. You saw some of that come out, but they are under tension too of COVID-19 and George Floyd and all these things happening. So explosive is an excellent word, Congresswoman. Shannon, what's your word?
I mean, I hate to be a little negative with mine, but mine would be anxiety. I think that at each step of the way along this year, we have since, and by we, I mean, we've really gone through a Dionysian experience, several, where everybody has almost felt the same thing at the same time, several times. So with COVID, of the fear of the unknown, and then the anxiety that came along with the whole country shutting down, really the whole world, and we've not lived through anything like this in 100 years. And then George Floyd and reliving and understanding just pressure of 400 years worth of structural racism that it's had on all of us, the anxiety of that. We all took to the streets, the anxiety that things have to get better because we can't, that we need a change. And now, as we are in the last 30 something days of this election, the anxiety that this is our moment, this is our time. Dear Lord, let's make this change that we all need. And truthfully, man, I think that we have to name it. Like you're seeing different engagement that people are having with one another. Social media has lost its mind. And I think that it's all because there is this level of anxiety that is out there amongst the populace and amongst all of us because of just the pressure that this year has put on us. And just because you have anxiety doesn't mean that you're not hopeful for the change. It's that you're really anticipating or expecting or needing that change to happen. So even though I'm using the word anxiety, the anxiety is, I think, what will drive the change that is necessary when we go out to vote on November 3rd or during early vote.
It's funny you say that because we had some mental health leaders on here a couple of weeks ago, and this anxiety issue is a real issue with regards to mental health. I mean, and again, that's what I was trying to say about the candidates last night. I think we all just have this sort of pent up everything from this year, and it's hard to get a feel for when it's going to come out. It might be, somebody bump into you at the store or something, or somebody does something and that anxiety can play out in a way that, can really set you off, and I think that's kind of how it's been. Now, so we got explosiveness and anxiety, two very good words, two very good descriptions. And I'm not sure those have been used. Anxiety, I'm not sure about, maybe somebody used that word, but before we get into some real issues, here's another one I just got to know, because I know for myself, I'm at home a lot and I'm cooking more. And so my thing that I picked up during COVID-19 2020 is put together a few dishes that I've been like, this is, I mean, try something new. So what have you picked up as something you just, 2020 is different, did you pick up anything? I know Joyce has been training. She's been running more, doing more running. I don't want to give, she probably have lots of things she's doing, but I know she was running. She was actually training because her nephew, I think, was training for be a firefighter. And she like, Joyce would challenge anybody, man. Joyce is like, oh, you're going to be a firefighter? I'll challenge you. That's Joyce. So, but tell me about something you picked up during 2020.
Well, I picked up biking. I had never really biked before, and it was one of the things that we can do that's safe outside. And so bought a bike and have been on the trails, and would encourage folks to, I mean, when I got out on the trails, I realized how many millions of dollars that we've invested out there, and how few, especially if few folks look like us, are using them. And so, I mean, the trails are awesome. So I do, nice. 75 to 100 miles a week.
You had to throw that in there, so you just 75.
Well, because I can't run like you and Joyce.
Yeah, I got you.
I can't run. I'll be out of breath, but I am able to bike, and that's how what I picked up this.
Okay.
Year.
Well, thank you, Kevin, for that, and running, jogging, and a little walking. Depends on when I went from 1 mile at a slow run to 2 miles at a slower run to 3 at run, walk, cry, run. I realized that I needed a lot more practice early in the morning. But like you, Kevin, cooking, I have to say, I love cooking, and my family would say I'm a great cook. So I've been exploring soups and dishes like that, gumbo, and actually trying recipes from cookbooks on the internet, making sauces and all kinds of things because you're here. And there's things in your cabinets that you really never thought about using. Or to be honest, the expiration date was coming up. So I just started cooking and enjoying yourself. I found more time to take time for myself and to not really meditate, but to analyze, to strategize, to think about the value of self and how important it is for us to be united. Taking a look at myself and deciding there are things that I could do more of, that there are things that I should speak out on, and just thinking about all of those anxieties, all of those explosive things. And most importantly, I've been consumed with COVID-19, the 3 pandemics. It's being here made me focus on every day, looking at the reports to see how many people have died. And then unfortunately, to see the disparities that we make up 13%, we being Black folks, make up 13% of the population. But then when we look at the number of us who are contracting the disease or the virus and those who are dying for it, it's in greater numbers than we are in the population. So there we are with the disparities and how things disproportionately affect us. And then the question is, so what, and what are we going to do about it?
Right. I mean, you hit the nail on the head. And I think so many people out there are trying to just figure out their way through 2020. But I love what you said, Congresswoman, just taking a look at yourself and trying to find something within you that you can improve or change, or just something that, you take time for yourself. And then I love what you said too, Shannon, about cycling. When I started running and doing the marathons, whatnot, I started using the bike trails. And I can remember when we first started investing in them when I was on city council, and I just never got to experience them as a sort of built out version. And it's absolutely gorgeous. It's good to get out there and see Columbus, see so many parts. You can get from one part of the city to the other and walk that thing and walk that trail and just really enjoy the neighbors, the neighborhoods that you go through. And just people, and it's really a good experience, and it's something that is probably an underrated element of Central Ohio. Before I throw out the next question, let me give a few quick shout outs to some of the folks watching. Malik Moore is watching, Susie Brettenstein. She's with the OSU College of Nursing. Thank you for joining us. I think you're a first-time viewer. Keena Smith, our deputy administrator, is joining us watching. Ari Tolles, Kevin Lloyd from Columbus Black. Thanks so much, Kevin. Tamika Vincent Reed from Delaware County. Thank you so much, Tamika, for tuning in. Lisa Boggs, Joy Miley, Dawn Tyler Lee from the city of Columbus. I think y'all might know her. Thank you so much, Dawn, for joining us. And then Jonathan Bentley, who's been on here every week. Thank you, Jonathan, for tuning in. And Michelle Leona. We also got Lakita Moye from Lorain County. Good to hear from you, Lakita. And then Rochelle Brown. Rochelle Brown is an employee at Franklin County at the Public Health Department. So good to see you, Rochelle. Thanks so much for joining us. So let me just get down to some real questions. Oh, by the way, I missed one. Ariel Sile, that's my niece. Ariel, thank you so much for joining. You better had signed in today because you hadn't been signed in, and I was going to reduce your Christmas gift this year, but that's another discussion. And then Alicia Bell. Alicia is watching. Alicia Bell is the chairperson of Wayne County Board of Commissioners. That's my homie. That's my homie in this commission land. Alicia, thanks so much for joining us, my sister. I'm so glad that, hey, even if you are from Michigan, we want you here. Now let's dig right into it. You know, everybody wants to know what happened the day we were down there and got pepper sprayed. Well, I don't think we need to tell the whole story. I think let's give them a little bit perspective about that experience. You know, Congresswoman, let me start with you. You know, here we are down there, the three of us together. We came down there together to support the protesters and encourage a peaceful demonstration for change. And things were going well. You know, it was a very diverse crowd. It was a very engaging crowd. People were coming up to us, taking pictures, talking to us. I don't recall any sense of tension when we were just out there before law enforcement got there and arrived. It seemed to me the public, and again, I'm not here to necessarily stomp on law enforcement and all that. I'm just saying, I'm talking about this incident. When we were there, I remember people were together. They were demonstrating. Remember, everybody took a knee at one point. And folks were taking pictures with each other, singing, and just really showing the type of camaraderie that leads toward change. And then things changed. And so, Congresswoman, from your lens, what do you want to say about that day and what happened? And then furthermore, given the report that's come out and whatnot, I mean, what next? You know, I mean, if a Congresswoman as high profile as yourself can be sprayed and pepper sprayed really for doing nothing, for just being out there, then what does that say about the broader public? You know, and so how are you feeling about that? Where do we go next? And Council President, I'm going to go right into you when she's done talking.
Well, first of all, Kevin, let me say thank you for starting with this and keeping it real and keeping it out front. But I'd like to back up 1 second to let everyone who is watching know this was not new for us. I think it's important for your audience and our constituents to know that we meet and we chat and we talk all the time, early mornings, late at night, and we don't always agree. But we have a commitment to the same end goal. We may get there differently. We may argue about it. But I remember clearly the conversation that we didn't go as elected officials. We actually went as friends saying, let's get together, let's do this. And we had all kinds of emotions about it because we went as human beings. Is this going to be safe? Should we really go? Do we need to go? But what was important was the end was, yes, we wanted to go. Right. We felt we needed to go as Black folks. We talked about this. As elected officials, people were saying we shouldn't go. And I remember the three of us saying, but what do we want to do? And we made a concentrated effort to say, hey, we believe this is peaceful. We should be seen there. We didn't know what was going to happen. We walked over there and people were shocked. They were happy. They were amazed. We were saying social distance. We were going by all of the rules. We wore our masks and people were very respectful, including some police officers.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's important to say that there were officers there that allowed us, because we had a better relationship with the people, to monitor the streets and say to folks, say what you want about the cops, exercise your freedom of speech rights. And trust me, rightly so, they did. It wasn't until we did actually see some folks in the street, and we crossed the street to ask them to get out of the middle of the street, because we wanted them to protest. We loved the idea. We had taken a knee. We had exhausted all of our vocal cords in screaming. But a different set of police officers came when we crossed the street. Later, I think it's important for people to know that we were told that those were the same officers who had been up all night, who came in riot gear mentality, that there was a problem. Let it be really stated clearly. There had not been any major problems, any problems at all. Police officers had said, thank you. Police officers had asked people not to get in the street, and all the protesters complied. They had a little pattern of walking on the sidewalk, and they had leaders, they had rituals. But when the officers came, those officers with the bicycles and the riots, and started using them to push people who might have had a toe or a foot over the curb, or who might have stepped down off the curb, but certainly
and
not.
quite frankly, I would just add too, Congresswoman, the crowd was building so much, you almost couldn't help but to spill out into the street a little bit. And it wasn't not purposeful. They weren't being sort of just disruptive. So I'm sorry to cut you off, but yeah, I just want to add that.
And I want to be as transparent and clear as could be. It was like nanoseconds that what was really speaking the words, whether it was Breonna Taylor or George Floyd or local people who had been killed or arrested, and all of a sudden, the momentum, as you said, Commissioner, of the crowd, we started going forward. Now, I take full responsibilities that I was angry when the police officers came with the bicycles, and when I saw people being thrown to the ground, and I saw young sisters and white sisters being hurled to the ground and pushed and shoved. There was a lot of emotion. I have played back several tapes repeatedly, and my words were very loud and clear. Stop, this is wrong. Now, I was as angry as any Black woman or sister could be, because I was there as a Black woman, a grandmother, and someone who happens to hold one of the highest offices in this land. But what lesson that taught me, and people may not like this, it doesn't matter when you're Black. It's like Denzel Washington said one day, with all his money, he was in an elevator, and some white women got on the thing and started holding their purses and cringing and scared because he had on jeans and a sweatshirt, but more importantly, because he was Black. And so I think what happened when the anxiety built, when the officers started unnecessarily, and this is my story, my opinion, pepper spraying. I didn't hear an announcement. I didn't hear bullhorns like we had heard before. I didn't hear any of that. And the crowd started moving forward. Hands were up in the air. I had a phone. I was trying to get closer. I wanted a video. I wanted a picture. I wanted it to stop, just as I'm doing now. And I am thankful, my brothers, that you saved me probably from something much worse than being pepper sprayed. When you embraced me and said, we need to get you out of here, the pepper spray, we don't know what's going to happen next. And that's when we were all, but Shannon more so than us, because he was full-faced, was pepper sprayed. And pepper spray does not have any direction when you are intentionally spraying people.
That's the issue with the policy. Yeah, no, sorry about that.
And exactly. And so I think that led us to speak up and to speak out for the people, because that's what people do who care. That's what elected officials must do. Now, there are going to be people who are going to love this story, hate this story, and write in. But here's my message to them. It's my story. It's what happened. It's the way it was. I have repeatedly said, I think it was unnecessary. And others will tell their story and they will say what they want to do or what should have happened or what should not have happened. But I was glad that I was out there. I understand what happens to protesters. I went back to Washington and sat and told John Lewis what happened to me. And he then shared his story and told me to continue to tell this story and to stand up for the people. And those who don't like it, he said, well, just tell them you're willing to stay in good trouble. So I think we got in good trouble. I think it set an example for us. I think we learned some lessons about how people turned their backs on us. I think we learned lessons how people have talked about us behind doors and in front of us. But I'm so proud of all those brothers and sisters out there. And a lady said, I was behind you. Didn't know you a lot, didn't know what I felt about you a lot. But when I saw you standing with us, when I saw you angry and saying this is wrong and to stop, I embrace you as one of the people. And that's what my job, that's what my persona is, being about the people.
So before you respond to Shannon, I want to say, Congresswoman, I had coffee with a young lady today. She happens to be, her family hails from Somalia, but she's first generation American, and she had wrote me, she interviewed for an internship she didn't get in my office, but I said, you got to keep going with it. And then she later disclosed how she wants to go into politics. She's thinking about politics. Her name is Rama. Hi, Rama. I hope you're watching out there.
Hi.
And so I said, she said, well, you know, can you mentor me? I said, absolutely. I love to mentor people. I was mentored by people myself, like people like Congresswoman Beatty. And she said, Congresswoman Beatty, you know Congresswoman Beatty? And she forgot all about me, that she was there. It was like, now it was all about, I want to meet Congresswoman Beatty, you know? And so I told her, I said, listen, here's what I know about Congresswoman Beatty. You call her and you just tell her you want to meet her, that you just want, and she will make time for you. I said, that is a fact. And I said, you know, I said, I'll say it on publicly because I know she won't mind. And I know she will give you the time of day when it comes time. So
Commissioner, tell her, and if she's listening, 614-220-0003, Joyce Beatty, call my office. We'll set up a Zoom and we'll start with our mentoring.
See, I'm
Thank
telling
you for wanting to be engaged.
And you're going to love this young lady. She is sharp as a tack. I mean, I was like, man, and we have some really good folks who apply for interns in my office, quite frankly. So it is real competitive. And so that she didn't get selected, it doesn't say much because we got really good people. But I told her, come back, try it again, you know, but I'm telling you, we'll be impressed. So let me go to Shannon. Shannon, talk about being out there that day. And you did, you took it on. I watched that video no less than a dozen times. And you took, you know, a pretty good amount directly to your face. But talk about, you're the president of council. I mean, essentially, these folks work for you. The CPD work for you. You provide them with their budget. You know, you provide them with other resources and things. And so tell the public about your experience and kind of how you're looking at things now.
Certainly. Well, one, I wouldn't differ any in terms of the account of what happened and how we got out there than what Congresswoman Beatty just explained. And so I won't even really go back into that detail, though. I guess the one thing that I would just add is my first thought when we walked up was, damn, this is a really diverse group.
Right. Me too.
Because, you know, a lot of protests that we have seen in the past, a lot of engagements like that, you know, especially for Black lives, it had only been Black folks out there walking up Broad Street. I think I said it. I think we all stated that right away. It was like, wow, this is an amazingly diverse group of folks out there. What I would say about the incident is something I think Congresswoman Beatty was hitting on was that, you know, truthfully, I mean, it was terrible to have it happen. But I'm so glad that it did happen to us because it opened our eyes, literally. Yeah. I mean, to what is going on. I mean, we hear the stories. We've, you know, especially as elected officials, we've been, especially in the city, and Kevin, you probably remember this from your days in City Hall. Elected officials are trained how you talk about interactions with police officers. You're trained to be very cautious about any type of criticism about it, especially about a specific event, because they always tell you, well, if you say something, then you as a city leader, it can be used against you, against the case, and And you have to give the ability for the case to happen before you can weigh in. Being out there and seeing for myself and going through it personally made very clear to me right away that we had to say something, and we had to say something that day, and call out what we saw. To Congresswoman's point, those 3 words still ring in my head. I remember her yelling it to the crowd and to the officers. This is wrong. And truthfully, we did go out there as just 3 Black folks, but with these positions, we never can take off our titles. And so we also were the 3 highest ranking African-American elected officials in this region. And for that to happen to us, I remember, so I left the event, still had, my eyes were still red, but at 2:00 that day, my nephew graduated from kindergarten, and Christian goes to Mansion Day School. Mansion is a all African-American school on the Near East Side. And just about by then it was starting to get out. And I knew it was a big deal. I remember we taped a video just to tell folks that we were okay. We were worried that folks might have thought that we had gotten, even more seriously hurt than we did. But it had gotten out by the time we got to the outside graduation. People came up to me crying with this statement. And this is when it really got to me. If this can happen to you all, what the hell will they do to me? And that hurt. That stung me as a leader of this community, because certainly wouldn't want to scare folks anymore than what was actually going on. And so, for me, it resolved that we need change and we need it now. That's why council got right to work. We put together a 4-point package for reform that dealt with use of spray, that dealt with demilitarizing our police force, that dealt with hate group affiliations within our police department, that dealt with, and really this is where we're going to need everybody who's listening today, with police oversight. Kevin, we're the largest city in the country that doesn't have independent investigations and a civilian review board. We're the largest city for now. And so if I would say anything, and I'm not too political, but I'm asking people to vote for issue 2. Vote yes for issue 2 to set the civilian review board up. And yes, we still have to go and negotiate with the FOP to get the final piece done. But we need to strengthen our hand by saying, we as Columbus, we want this, and let the FOP do what they're going to do. But I want us to have a clear message from Columbus voters that this is our expectation when it comes to policing in Columbus, and that's not an indictment on good officers. Good officers should want to have oversight, because at the end of the day, policing and public safety is all about public trust. If you lose the public trust of this community, you can't hire enough police officers to keep us safe. We have 915,000 people in this community and 1,800 police officers. If you don't have the trust and the consent of the people that these folks are doing this to keep us safe, then the whole thing can crumble. And so for me, it starts with issue 2, getting that passed in November and moving forward with more reforms, because we know that this is a long road ahead of us. You don't turn around 400 years of structural racism overnight. But I think that I'm more committed than ever, and I know that for sure.
Yeah, I mean, you said a lot that I think the public will respond to. Before I just make a few comments, let me just give a shout out to Meredith Lawson Rowe, City Council Reynoldsburg up in here. All right, Meredith, thanks. Second week she's been on. I appreciate you. Now, I know I'm probably going to mess this name up, but I have Milu Nigen. I hope I got that right. I'm sorry if I didn't, but she's a Franklin County public health nurse. Thank you so much for what you do. You're on the front lines, and we appreciate you. Carolyn Duvail, I think it is. So Carolina Duvail. Thank you so much. Phil Calloway, Ambrosia Lanice. Hope I got that right. Amy Fink, Cheryl Brooks Sullivan, my treasurer that's watching. Thank you, Cheryl. That's my girl too. That's my home. I'm so glad that you're watching. Talk to her all the time. Eddie Milligan Driscoll, Crystal Hall Boyce. Hey, Crystal. Brianna Baduder, I think. I'm so terrible with names. Don't hate me. And then Carter Womack, thank you so much for joining us. I hope you're enjoying this discussion. Lamar Peoples, thank you so much. Lachelle Stroud is also watching. Thank you so much, Lachelle and Lamar, for being on. I hope you're enjoying this conversation.
Can I tell people to vote for Lachelle Stroud and for
No, sir. You see this background? That means I'm in my official office. This is an official thing, sir. Yeah.
Sorry. Sorry.
You can just tell people to vote.
Just go out to vote, guys.
Sure you get registered.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
That's right. That's right. Come on, Council President. Well, let me go back to a couple of things you said, and you know, the opportunity for the public to weigh in on this is looming, and you have until October 5th, which happens to be my birthday. Thank you very much. Yes, be my birthday. I won't say how old I will be, but I'll be just a year older than Shannon. Yeah, right.
It's like 20 years.
Shannon, that's rude. That is rude. Okay, thank you, Congresswoman. Shannon, you're rude. I mismuted you right there. I didn't get to the button quick enough. But you as the public, it's your opportunity to weigh in and be a part of the solution. And this is where the rubber meets the road. See, as elected officials, we have so much power, so much authority, but much of that authority and that power is rooted in what you give us, what you empower us to do. And so this is your opportunity to demonstrate where we are as a community. And I'm confident that we're going to deliver. It's time for change. It's long overdue, long overdue. And I think what stood out to me most about what the Congresswoman and the president of City Council said was, you know, if it can happen to us. And somebody asked me, they said, well, did they know it was you? You know, they know it was you as I said, first of all, it doesn't matter whether it's me or so. I said, but I don't know. The shirt that I had on that said County Commissioner Kevin Boyce might have gave it away. You know, I said, so yeah, I think they knew, but they didn't care. And deeper than that is this use of force policy. And I think that's the beauty of what happened. And so our sacrifice for that pain, for that moment in that day, the value in that is what it exposed as this conversation need to have on the use of force. When is it needed? Why is it needed? How is it needed? What are we deploying in these kind of situations? Because when you think of Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, Trayvon Martin, these are people who didn't have to die. They didn't have to die. And so we think about other resources and other tactics that can address the situation. Certainly that was one. And I believe that the Congresswoman Beatty's account is exactly my account to the word, to the word. I mean, I'm serious. They're everything from the bikes right up from the first group being of officer being relatively friendly and, you know, hey, we're trying to get people on the sidewalk and really, you know, engaging. The second group became, and it was like on. It was on, and enough is enough. It's time for us to write this new chapter. I won't go into my little soapbox.
Can I just make one more point? Because neither one of us, the three of us didn't mention this. And part of your question, you mentioned the Baker Hostetler findings. So I think the commissioner.
And explain for those who may not know what the Baker Hostetler findings were. What is that?
Certainly. So several days after the incident, and again, you got to remember that the pepper spray incident, the things that we were hearing from the community around rubber bullets and stuff, there were so many complaints coming into the city that we felt that we had to independently investigate what happened that weekend. Once, so we know what we can do better, but also to hold people accountable. Specifically, to hold people accountable if there were actions that were unjust or didn't meet the law as it stood. And so we contracted with Baker Hostetler to do this investigation. It came out maybe 2 weeks ago now, about 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, something like that.
Congresswoman, we got briefed that morning or so about what was going to be in the report at noon. Something that still sticks out to me to this day was a word or a phrase. These are the facts of the case. And it sends chills down my body right now, because when someone says these are the facts, especially someone of authority, then everybody just takes it as facts. there were findings that say that these were the facts of the case that just don't jive from what I saw with my own eyes. And I think I said this in our briefing that, you know, it's cool because at the end of the day, you're talking to a congresswoman, a council president, and a commissioner. We're okay. We were going to be okay. But it put all I could think about are the mothers and the parents and the families that have had these types of incidents, police involved shootings that are incidents in general, and some that have led to people dying. That somebody came back and said, these are the facts of the case. And that person that doesn't have the resources or the faculties to push back and say, that is not right, that is not true. That got to me. And so that's why I think all three of us, matter of fact, we did a joint statement saying we disagreed because we didn't want people to think that just because somebody wrote, these are the facts of the case, that that is actually what happened. Or that we would not stand up and say, call it out by what we experienced ourselves.
Shannon, you're absolutely right. And I have a different word for it. It was interesting when you hear as a lay person or an elected official, the facts of the case. They were the words of the case. They were the words that individuals said. My jacket is clearly blue, but if I walk into an interview and I emphatically say the facts is the label in this jacket says purple, then people writing it down will say Congresswoman Beatty stated that it was purple because that was the statements that I made. And there were some glaringly different statements
you're right.
That did not match. So it's interesting when—
And in some cases, Congresswoman, they took the word of the law enforcement officer over witnesses,
exactly.
You know,
Exactly. And some witnesses that were key, they said, oh, we didn't talk to them. Like a lady who has been pepper sprayed and a lady that was accused of reaching for a police officer's belt that we couldn't see in any video. So to me, it was very misleading. It was very incomplete. It was very biased. It was very much a conflict. And this is not about me in any ways. It was, I just don't agree. Now that's my story and that's my facts of the case. And so I thought it was important, and I was pleased that we all issued a collective statement with individual responses to it that were very fluid in what we felt. I think that it was a lesson learned for us, and I'm glad that we stood up for the people as elected officials and as minorities.
And I tell you, it galvanized what I know is the work that we need to do going forward. You know, I know that just like the Baker-Hostetler report came out, and I love how you set it up in terms of what they said as facts. You know, that's subjective in many ways because your facts versus your facts, at some point you have to choose which one you decide is the truth. And then that's what they go with. And all too often, that same kind of perspective is represented in our judicial system. And that's when we see a lot of the disparities play out and who's being locked up, for how long they're being locked up, and for what reasons they're being locked up. Let me give a quick shout out to Patricia Allen. They gave me the, I think it's Cather, no last name. So Cather, thank you so much for tuning in. And then my Franklin County Clerk of Court leader, Mary Ellen O'Shaughnessy, thank you so much for joining. Mary Ellen has been out there every week. True friend. I appreciate you. I love you so much. You are doing a great job at Franklin County, and I love working with you. You've made a difference. And then Coach Jim Clemens is back watching. Coach, I know you got stuff to do with, and so that you taking time to watch. I know it was the Congresswoman that got you on here, but I'm just saying, thanks so much for tuning in again. And then Charity Martin King, we all know Charity. Thanks, Charity, for joining.
Charity was out there at the march. She was out there peacefully protesting, speaking truth to power, taking photos. I just love her. She speaks truth to power.
Charity's always out there, and Charity will call you out. If you ain't doing something right, Charity, though, you could be friends or whatever, and she will call you out. Great community leader.
One of y'all got called out that morning. I'm just saying.
Yeah, I hear it. And then Carl Avini, thank you so much for joining us. So a couple of things before we move off of this topic, because I got to get some conversation about the census. Before we move on, I think people want to know what it's like to be a congressperson, Congresswoman. And then Shannon, I want people to, what is it like to be council president? That's a big deal. And so if you both can maybe give a little wound up, tell people what it's like to walk in a congressperson's shoes.
Well, I think it's a very unique opportunity, and it's one that is like no other experience I've had. First of all, I had never been in the United States Capitol, looking up at the dome, going to the top of the dome, having the history of women and Black folks helping to build it. I had no idea of living in two places literally for most of your life, the amount of reading, the choices, and that you actually do federal legislation. You know, people call me about the neighborhoods, and I'm there, but I spend a bulk of my day writing and reading legislation, co-sponsoring over 1,600 pieces of legislation, spending hours pre-COVID sitting in a seat for 6 and 7 hours with no phones, no laptops that you can use or talk on the floor, the committee assignments, never thinking about, even at the State House, setting committees, but never for 10 and 12 hours and voting at 3 and 4 in the morning. But it's the most rewarding experience. And you're there helping the people. And let me put it in the words of this year, an explosive positive event. I did something over at the African American OSU Extension Center. And that question was asked. And I said, why don't you come and see what a day is like? Why don't I put a busload of individuals from the community? Pay for it. You don't have to pay for anything. We'll get you there. We're going to put you up in a Capitol Hill hotel. We're going to feed you, and you're going to walk with me through my office and witness it. And you're going to go to a Congressional Black Caucus Summit with Maxine Waters and Reverend Barber and leaders from across the country. These were very talented individuals. They were street individuals. There were people who were highly educated, not educated, progressive, just a lot of age ranges. And in their words, when they got there, they had no idea. They were in awe. They were excited. They went to microphones and asked charging questions to the panelists. And so in their eyes, it was the same as my first year there and my second year there, and now my fourth term there. Still considered a freshman and junior member of Congress. But I can tell you, serving when you had a Black president, going to the White House was a lot different to the East and West Wing with President Obama. Being there for breakfast and traveling on Air Force One, this is a little Black girl from Ohio. Public schools, state-supported colleges, working my way through and being very blessed to have had a lot of opportunities because of people like us mentoring. So many people put their hands on my shoulders. So many people lifted me up. I can tell you, sitting, going to conventions, being on the House floor, giving powerful speeches, and lastly, serving with John Lewis and sitting next to him on the floor. And last night, being at a debate and witnessing what a mockery looks like. Yeah. I can just tell you, it has been one of the most surreal, rewarding, and humbling experiences of my life. And I'm not usually at a loss for words, but I can remember walking on the House floor and in caucuses and hearing people speak 5 languages and speaking truth to power and hearing people quote things from the Judiciary Committee and talking about impeachment. And there I am up in the middle of it because of the constituents in Columbus, Ohio. So
well, you said, you know, they still treat you like a freshman. So I was on that trip. So I'm about to speak some truth to power right now. Joyce, she act like a freshman. Look, she had the bus and she had us in the hotel. All of that's absolutely right. We took us around. But if Joyce wanted to stop traffic in Washington, D.C., she would jump out that bus in a minute and stop the traffic and be like, let my constituents on through. And this is in Washington, D.C. And the police officer would be like, oh, yeah, that's Joyce. That's Congresswoman Beatty. Let it, she doing what she do. And I mean, I'm serious, y'all. They know Congresswoman Beatty in D.C. and they treat us with
I was going to
loyalty.
do the same thing. One of the highlights of this year for me was joining Congresswoman Beatty for the March on Washington. It was not a pre-planned event. Matter of fact, I texted her that night before. As soon as I found out she was speaking at the March on Washington, and just wanted to make sure that she knew that she had some people there from Columbus to support her, to be with her. Never knowing that she would be able to literally take me on the steps. I was able to stand right there. But Kevin, she's a rock star.
Oh,
and people don't realize that here in Columbus. I mean, she is a rock star. So everybody knows that I started out as a staffer for Coleman. It took me way back to my days of staff in Coleman. I was taking pictures nonstop. There was a line, Kevin, I promise you. There was a line of all these folks who see her as this Black woman leader, not just for Columbus, for the country. They see her dignity. And some wouldn't even know her name, but as you would see that they would know that she was somebody.
They knew,
and they would gravitate to her. And it was an amazing thing for me to be a part of that day. So I'm very grateful.
Let me just say thank you. You all are so helpful. And one last thing that people don't know, and that's going to Congress that I didn't know, that if you get selected, you will serve on a committee. And I worked very hard to serve on one of 4 of the top committees and was fortunate enough from working hard. But that also got me this year a sub-chairmanship, which is very rare, because sometimes people say you've been there too long. Well, people in the room with you, 435 people, there might be 200 people that don't even know your name. And I think it's my gray hair that helps me a lot. But I can tell you this, here's what people don't know. Going to Washington, you get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, you have pickup services at 6, you're still out 12 hours later. And here's another thing, there are no free rides. There are no free places to live. There are no free dinners. And my dues is $500,000.
Wow.
So I'm not proud. I don't like it. I would vote against it if I could, but it doesn't happen. We lose every time. So when people say, oh, she's just there, all politics are local. I come home every week after a vote.
And I'm always amazed at how much you're here. I really am. I got to say, there's nobody that does it better. There's nobody that does it better. To have to be in Washington and Columbus, you would think she's here all the time or there all the time, no matter where she's there. And it's amazing. We got a little bit of time. We got about 7 minutes. Shannon, people want to know about being president of council too. I mean, that's a big job, man. And you're, a relatively young dude, relatively. I mean, what's that like? You deal with the mayor, you got 6 other council members.
Yeah, being a council president is very different than being a council member. So I was on council for 3 years before my colleagues selected me as council president. And truthfully, I think my age is important in that it's indicative that we have a younger council. Mm-hmm. I think the majority, our mean age.
He's a real millennial, y'all.
Our mean age is 33 years old, which is right in line with the mean age of Columbus, which is 32 years old. And so I just think that it's representative of the city that we serve, and not just about being a council president, but just being a local official. The thing that I love the most is something that maybe other folks don't, is the proximity to our constituents. I say I don't have to spend that much money on polls to find out how I'm doing. I call it the Kroger caucus. I know when I'm not doing well because people at East Main Street Kroger,
man, they'll let you know.
Come up and tell me.
Let you know.
And on the other side, they'll let you know when you're doing well. Hey, thank you for fighting for me. I saw that piece of legislation that you put forward last week, and so that's what I appreciate the most. I feel like in this year in particular, on all leadership, regardless of elected or not, there's a weight on your shoulders because people need help. People are struggling. People have lost their jobs. People need food on their table. I just did a press event an hour ago where we announced that because of Congresswoman Beatty and because of the PPP program and getting money to in the CARES Act, getting money to cities, we were able to fund, and because of the partnership with the county, Commissioner O'Grady was a part of the announcement, we were able to fund 800 small businesses. 80% of them were African-American and women-owned businesses. Yeah. Like, we were able to do that with those CARES Act dollars to keep food on the table. That was a great feeling. That was a great feeling. It was, and I said, this was good governing. It was Congresswoman Beatty doing what she had to do in DC to get the money to the county, to the city, county and the city working to get money to these agencies that know these minority-owned businesses, and us working quickly to get those dollars out the door. And it's days like that I feel good and can sleep well that we are actually helping people.
Well, you both are doing a fabulous job. I mean, I hear nothing but great things all the time about you both, seriously. And I can't say that about every elected official. So everybody loves you. We don't get everything right, but we get a lot of things right. And, this is a strong community. We've got strong leadership, and certainly the two of you are part of it. I got to give a quick shout out to Erica Crawley. Woo! Definitely, my state rep over there, Erica Crawley, doing big things. She got big things to come too. Sandra Jackson, Davina Ware, and Charles Hill, my man Charles Hill. And then Charles was out there that day at the protest with us.
Yep.
And Eileen Paley, Judge Eileen Paley, former city council member. Thanks so much, Eileen, for joining us. We got to go out talking about the census, because I really, and it's just never enough time. With you two, we could really do this for a couple hours. I mean, we didn't even get to racism as a public health crisis. We didn't get to, this next stimulus package and where things are with that in Congress. We didn't even get to even what the COVID-19 environment looks like for the next 3 months, but we can take a minute, because we've got another week or so left to collect census data, because all of that plays into all the things we care about and all the things we're talking about. And so I'm going to start with you, Congresswoman, because this is a federal issue, really. And we got the date extended for some time, but we've got about 3 minutes. That's right. October 5th. And we got 3 minutes. Tell us how important the census is for folks to fill out that census form in these last couple weeks.
Let me tell you, it is one of the most important things that we can do. We advocate for the people, whether it's housing or education or all of those services. So in simple language, think about the services that you tell us we need to fight for. Think about when you call me and you talk about poverty, and you talk about the lack of housing, and you talk about poor education. When you complete the census, that allows us to proportionately take those dollars and send it back into our community for services. When we talk about how congressional lines are drawn and how we want our elected officials to be elected, all of these things play right into why it's so important for you to fill out your census to be counted. If you are not counted, the money is still there. It just means we don't get the money.
On somewhere else. Yeah.
That's the key thing in very simple terms. I don't want to make it federally complicated. The bottom line, people who are with me, thank me for getting monies and services. People who challenge me or say you're not doing enough, it's for those same things. So this is a time we can have a win-win. Fill out the census. We worked hard to take away as many of the disparities and the things that will be against you by getting it right. We fought hard to get the extension on it, because those who don't want you to have the services, those who don't want you to reap the benefits of our great system will tell you not to complete the census. I'm telling you, we have until October the 5th. Please fill out your census. It will make a difference in the lives of those in our community.
Absolutely. Council President, what would you add to that?
Not much more. I mean, simply put, census is about who has the money and who has the power. And so if folks on Livingston don't fill out the census and the folks in Delaware do, guess what? The money's going to Delaware and not to our community. And we have to be counted. We have to be counted so that we can provide those services.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I would add, I think you both hit it right on the nail on the head. First, if you haven't filled it out, go to my2020census.gov. That's my2020census.gov, or you can call 844-330-2020. That's 844-330-2020. The only thing they didn't mention about the census and its impact is the congressional seats are also drawn based on our population. And right now, we are in a fight with states like North Carolina and Georgia and some of these southern states that are growing at a faster rate than us. The last two census, the last 2 decades, Ohio has lost a seat.
Yeah.
And in fact, in the last one, because of it, we lost a seat, but Central Ohio had grown. We created a situation where the 3rd congressional seat was created here in Ohio. And thus they got Congresswoman Beatty. She was the first person to hold that seat. And
we
so,
stand a chance, maybe, in our Central Ohio to pick up another seat. Kevin, I can't thank you enough. And when I said how our lines are drawn and how we get our seats, I probably should have been a little stronger in saying our congressional seats. So I thank you for that.
Yeah, and I just want to bring that up because we wouldn't have you there, but for the census, the way it was taken last time. And so what that means, I can tell you for Franklin County, she personally delivered over $80 million, about $80 million from the CARES Act to us. And so the jobs and the small businesses and nonprofits that President Hardin was just talking about, well, that money came from our advocacy, from our congressional representative, Congresswoman Joyce Beatty. And so imagine if we didn't have that seat when they were looking at the formulas and whatnot, and they were saying that, counties over under $500,000 or 500,000 residents couldn't get direct funding because they take out the largest city, anything over 500,000. You know who I called? Congresswoman Beatty. And I said, Congresswoman Beatty, here's how it's going to affect Franklin County. And she said, I'm on it. And that's the kind of representation we need in Washington. It's the thing that makes all of the difference. If you don't believe me, ask one of those 800 businesses that may not close because of the grant we just gave. Ask some of the folks who got rent subsidies or food subsidies or got other resources during this time when they most needed it. And much of that is because of the representation we had.
$600 additional money for unemployment. And let me just say this. Thank you to all those small businesses out there, and especially the women and the Black-owned businesses, for calling me and reaching out. I was the first member of Congress to go to the House floor and say the word barbers, hair salons, folks who are Black businesses, other minorities, and women-owned businesses. It's so important for us to take care of those in our communities because they are disproportionately affected, and there's so many disparities. There's so much systemic racism and culture change that we need. And I'd like to thank both of you. Kevin, for your leadership in getting out there and talking about poverty and talking about it being a national crisis, more than just words. You have put action to it. You have brought the city along with you. You have brought the federal government along with you. And that's why I was so proud to introduce racism as a national crisis, not an indictment against anyone, an indictment against everyone if we don't work together for change. I can't thank you enough, my brother.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is, once again, has been just a great show. We could go on for hours with this. I know we're a little bit over time, so I'm sorry about that. If those of you who might be at work, tell your boss, Congresswoman, you was talking to Congresswoman Beatty and President Hardin. They'll be all right. And just keep the comments coming in. I love the messages I get on Instagram. I love the feedback I get. I was going to stop this show after 3, and then y'all asked me to keep going. And so I really appreciate that. I hope it's been meaningful. Again, it's Wednesday. It's 4 o'clock. So that means into a brotherly conversation, even sisterly conversation about wealth, health, and race in Central Ohio. We'll be back next week, same time, same place. See y'all. Thanks for joining us today.